this opportunity. Again, my name is Daniel Krause. I'm with a nonprofit advocacy organization, and our only mission is to promote this project and make sure that it serves the Californians the best way it can. I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to talk about benefits, but I'm going to expand on a lot of what Mike talked about earlier. He talked about a lot of the direct benefits of high-speed rail. He did get into some of the stuff I'm going to talk about too. But I'm going to talk about how the high-speed rail project, as we see it, is transformative and a catalyst for many other benefits and change in society that will help us with, it'll multiply the benefits far beyond the direct benefits of the high-speed rail itself. Basically, high-speed rail, we feel, is the most proactive, it's the most proactive action we can take out of anything we can do right now in California to improve our quality of life and our environment. And essentially what we see is high-speed rail is a foundational component to a cleaner and safer transportation system, and also as a corollary, a smarter land use patterns, which I'll talk about how that affects farmland. As a catalyst of positive change, we will save a lot of farmland by reducing sprawl, we'll improve air quality, reduce global greenhouse gases, and also and then that will also lead to a lot of public health benefits that a lot of time that does not get discussed very much regarding high-speed rail. So first, high-speed rail is a catalyst for a shift in land use patterns. Already we can see what's happening. The fact that the high-speed rail project exists right now, it's already leading to all kinds of different planning efforts here in Central Valley and other cities that are going to have high-speed rail to orient their planning towards the future of high-speed rail. That means how do we change land uses so that they can serve the high-speed rail project? How do we connect other forms of transportation, public transportation, to connect to the high-speed rail system? So it's very stimulative in actually getting local cities to start thinking about how they can use the high-speed rail project to do other things that are going to benefit our quality of life and our environment. Already there's a new focus on looking back at the city centers. That's happened to a certain degree in some of the larger urban areas in California, but it's just starting to emerge here in the Central Valley. Fresno, Bakersfield, Merced, and some of the other cities are really looking at how they can redirect growth so they can save their farmland and other things like that. The high-speed rail project's actually already funding station area grants for planning around the high-speed rail stations. In other words, if the project wasn't here, we wouldn't be doing aggressive planning to change our land use patterns here in the Central Valley. So that's all going to, it's leading towards a refocusing of growth in downtown areas, which benefits the periphery in terms of consuming farmland. And so I'll just talk more specifically about how high-speed rail is a catalyst for farmland preservation, since I think that's a big issue here. So in terms of the high-speed rail direct impacts on up to approximately 5,000 acres could be affected directly by the high-speed rail project. We'll acknowledge that in terms of farmland loss due to the project itself. And we'll also acknowledge that some land will also be indirectly impacted by that. We understand that it's not just the actual land that's affected, but it's also some of the surrounding land. We understand that. Hopefully, as part of the process of the EIR, and now there's a 6-month delay, they're going to revise the EIR, at least from Fresno to Bakersfield. And I think that's in response to some of the concerns about how they cut through farmland. And hopefully, through that process, that they will be able to mitigate whatever the indirect impacts are to some of that land that's on the periphery of the actual project itself. But we need to keep in mind the current trends of farmland loss in Central Valley. It's amazing how huge it is, and it dwarfs this 5,000 acre number plus some of the other stuff we've been talking about. Over 1 million acres, probably about 1.2 million acres are estimated to be lost to urbanization by 2050 here in the Central Valley. That's a mind-bogglingly huge number. And that's because of the current way we do land development and we do transportation. Those are very related. When we build highways-based transportation system, it generally leads to lower density types of land use patterns. So if we don't have some sort of game changer like high-speed rail, we're going to continue this pattern, and we're going to continue to gobble up farmland at a massive rate. So, just to summarize, land use and transportation change is catalyzed by the high-speed rail project. It won't eliminate all the problems with sprawl, but it's a key component to turning the ship around so we can make sure that we have a lot of farmland here in this California, which is critical to the world's food security. High-speed rail is also, in terms of more the indirect benefits again, high-speed rail is also starting to catalyze expanding transit, that would connect to the high-speed rail stations in cities. I just talked to a friend earlier this evening. He's plotting out a bus rapid transit system, and I know Fresno is also doing the same thing that would link to a future high-speed rail station. And other cities are discussing this too. This kind of thinking is emerging because we're doing high-speed rail. If we weren't doing high-speed rail, we would just kind of be going along doing the same thing that we always do, which is expanding freeways, and continuing to plot new subdivisions on farmland. And in fact, Fresno, Bakersfield, Merced are all planning transit hubs at their high-speed rail stations. They're not just going to have high-speed rail by itself. They're already seeing this as the central area where they're going to combine a whole new system of public transportation. So that's how it's going much beyond the benefits of just the line itself. And then I just want to talk a little bit about public health. I mentioned in terms of two things, air quality and increased public safety. We all know that high-speed rail will run on electricity, and it also can be powered by renewable power sources. So we know this project itself will help clean the air. But what about if it's really encouraging better land use patterns, and it's also encouraging public transportation? Those things also will clean the air. That means more people are walking and avoiding trips in cars to get things like bread and milk at the store. The connecting transportation. So, not sure why I got laughed at that. The point is, the cleaner, by having the multiplier effect on the air, and we have a terrible air quality problem here in the Central Valley. I can't imagine us continuing the same process to to make that problem worse. We have to do something. The air is unhealthy. How can we continue to build more freeways, which is going to make it more dirty? In terms of safety, public safety, high-speed rail is the safest form of transportation that the world has ever invented. Japan's high-speed rail system has now been operating for 47 years without a single fatality. We lose over 30,000 Americans to car accidents per year. If you do the math, there's going to be a lot of long-distance car trips diverted to high-speed rail around California if we build this system. Obviously, that's going to save lives, since driving is the most dangerous form of transportation that we engage in every day, and high-speed rail is the safest form of transportation. So I firmly believe one reason I really advocate for high-speed rail is because I think it's going to save lives and also prevent a lot of injuries for our citizens. Now, if we don't do this, if the folks that don't want to move forward, I think Mike talked about earlier, what will we get in the future if we're not bold enough to move forward with the first step here in the Central Valley? Massive farmland loss. We keep hearing about how this project is bad for farmland, but I actually think it's going to be a lot worse if we don't do it for farmland. Overwhelmed transportation system. I think we're all stressed driving on the highways many times now. It's going to get worse. And so that's a poor quality. It reduces our quality of life. Worsening air pollution. That's more asthma in our children. It's more premature death in people. And again, more people will die based on being on the roads. I mean, that's just the math. I'm not trying to be dramatic. That is a pretty obvious calculation. So anyway, I want to end on a positive note. We need to seize the moment. We really, if we don't seize the moment, it's likely a generation before politicians and other folks will want to engage in such an endeavor. So if we lose it, it's gone for a generation, and we'll have to figure out another way to get around the state. But if we take this challenge on, high-speed rail will be the catalyst that will really shift transportation land use paradigm and all those associated benefits beyond the project itself. Thank you very much.